Hello, and welcome to Multiform. Every week we get together to talk about the latest Xbox news, rumors, and the games we've been playing lately. New episodes post every Monday morning. You can email the show, questions at multiformpodcast.com, or you can reach us on Twitter or Facebook at multiformpod. This is episode 254. I'm your host, Tim Shelton, and I'm joined this week by the electrician that also games, Gus Harden.
I do game, but mostly I sail boats.
And Spencer is on vacation, and we won't say where because I don't like to. I know I personally
an undisclosed location.
I don't like people announcing when I'm traveling where I've gone.
He did do something that was World of Warships akin this weekend, though. That was cool.
And he sent me a noob question. He thought he forgot. So there was a power outage in Indiana related to thunderstorms over this last week, and Spencer's house lost power the day before he left, and the morning of his flight, they drove, they didn't fly. The morning they left, he still didn't have power. So his Xbox, he had turned off the power strip and unplugged it or something like that because of the, protect against surges and stuff, and, just to be careful, but he forgot to plug it back in. So he didn't have his console plugged in, and he was going to, I guess, play it remotely, but, he forgot to plug it back in. But I reminded him, even when it's unplugged, you can still play cloud gaming. So he does have an Xbox controller. So I'm sure he'll play a little bit while he's gone. Probably not much, though, because, on vacation, I like to game a little bit in the evenings once my kids go to sleep. But, you're there to do vacation things. Also, I should mention, I'm the only one home right now, and my kids are supposed to be in bed asleep. But I highly suspect that at some point, one of the two children will come screaming, running into this room. And whether I edit it out in post is up in the air. If it's funny, I may just leave it in, especially if they come in and they're like, Starfield's terrible. Dad, play a real game like Paw Patrol. They're too young to play games.
Paw Patrol, the movie, the game.
They're not too young to play games, I shouldn't say. But the only two games they've played are Forza Horizon and Lego Star Wars. They're three and a half.
That's all they need, Tim.
3.5, and that's all they've played. Yeah. Let's see what else. Okay, so also this is Xbox versus the FTC Part 2, which is officially, I think it's FTC v Microsoft, but that's what the hearing was called, not the way we're referring to it. So we've got a lot of anecdotes from that to talk about, as well as the other news from the week. But before we get to the news, we always talk about what we've been playing, and I think both of ours are going to be pretty short, which is good because we have a lot of news with the FTC stuff. But do you want to go first or second?
I can go first. I've been playing the usual
suspects.
Legends. Nothing to really talk about there. And then I played Smite because I was trying to get an achievement that will get my game score back to either a 5 or a 0 score. Because right now I am at 81,051 gamer score, which I'm sure would annoy a lot of people. To me, it's not particularly worrisome, but and honestly, after trying for 2 nights in a row to get it, I don't think I'll care too much later to go back and do it.
It bothers me to be at a weird number to no end, such that I won't play Redfall because of all its weird achievements.
Yeah, I didn't realize that Smite had all these weird numbered achievements. Otherwise,
the worst offender that I've personally played is No Man's Sky. It has a ton of stuff that ends at like 3 or 7, and that annoys the crap out of me. In fact, once I got it back to even on that game specifically, I said, I'm never playing this again. There's no way I'll ever play that game again. Because if I get one accidental achievement, I'll never get back to an even number.
I feel like it's a ploy to keep you invested in the game if you're an OCD person. So much so that if you get an achievement that's an odd score, you're like, well, I have to play this other champion or god or whatever to get this score.
It really feels like, so the meta game that is achievement hunting, I'm sure less people are interested in it than in previous years or generations.
Well, because it's like achievements are just like whatever, and you don't really get anything for them.
I know,
like,
that's why
gamer score, but it's like they don't. Like, it's not like in Halo 3 where it's like your achievements were directly tied if you could get certain armor pieces.
Yeah, I wish they would incorporate some of the stuff that third-party sites have done into the achievement system to upgrade it on Xbox. Like, give us a ratio of like what percentage of your games, Like on average, what percentage do you complete? Like
or even like
60% and a completion score. Like how many
like a
games did you
monetary
get
bonus would be nice.
100%? And how many
'Cause it's-
games did you also 100% all the DLC? And like I don't know, stats and more meta goals to go after. But I don't want to fall down this rabbit hole because we have
No,
plenty
you're
to
good.
talk about. But yeah, I understand 100%.
I just wish we got cooler stuff for achievements anymore.
Yeah, on PlayStation you get a profile like avatar when you get a platinum, but all the platinums I got, apparently I hadn't ticked like a marketing email checkbox or something, so I didn't get any of them.
One thing I actually forgot about was that it used to be, I think you still can, is that achievements that have art, you can use them as your Xbox
that's true.
background.
But
So
have you noticed that nobody does art anymore ever since the Xbox
my
One launch?
Xbox One, I have an achievement art from Star Wars Battlefront 2
Yeah, but
2017 that I
like a
use
majority of modern games just do like iconography.
Yeah,
Like Star Wars
which is
Jedi
boring.
Survivor had some really boring stuff. The cool stuff is mostly first party. Uh-oh, I hear a sound. Is that a child? So is that all that you played?
Yes, it is. Honestly, at this point, I'm about to just be like a World of Warships only person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I played Apex Legends and Destiny for a good amount of time, so. And I'm back. Well, it was not good audio for those of you listening because my daughter, when she sneaks out of her room, she thinks we won't notice, but she opens her door and you can hear the sound change in the room in the house. And so I knew she was out running around, but she's like stealthy, and so she just peers around the wall, like just the corner of her eye peeked around the wall to see if we'll notice. So she's just like standing out there, like a little spy, seeing if anyone will catch her. It's like an hour and a half past their bedtime, so she's there. Well, wait, is it even more than that? Yeah, it's like an hour and a half past their bedtime. They should be exhausted. They just got really mad at me because I threatened consequences for their behavior. But anyway, no one's here to listen to my parenting. It will be funny if they come and interrupt the show, but if she just stands creepily outside the door and peeks at me, that's not good audio. So let's see what I've been playing. So I'm out of breath from chasing those kids around. A Plague Tale Requiem. I finished a Plague Tale Requiem. Spencer finished it as well. I'm sure he'll talk about that when he gets back. The existence of this isn't a spoiler, but there is an after credits scene, and I hope that it means there's going to be a third game, because why have an after credits scene if you're not working on something else? But it teases like an entire new direction for, I'm going to call it a franchise, 2 games, but for the next sequel or the spinoff or whatever that might be teasing. Maybe at the end of the show, I'll talk about it briefly so that I don't spoil it for anybody that's still going to play a Plague Tale Innocence or a Plague Tale Requiem. So at the very end, I'll give a spoiler warning if I remember 45 minutes to an hour from now. But the ending was really, really cool. I would say this game is really dark. The ending, and especially the journey to get to the ending, took as much emotional toll on me. The last game I remember playing this much dread after playing was The Last of Us Part 2, where just afterwards I was just like emotionally like spent. And that's how I felt at the end of A Plague Tale Requiem. Not quite as strongly because it's not as like relentless in its darkness, but it definitely is dark and it made me feel things. So it was good. I liked it. My only real complaint about A Plague Tale is that sometimes the game is really like slow. Like it forces you to like do that thing where you can only walk a certain speed when you want to be running, and it controls your speed of movement too much, in my opinion. But my phone just started. I guess it thinks I said a keyword to do audio voice to text. Thanks, phone. The other thing is I've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I've just been trying to, do some Assassin's Creed things because I know after Starfield and after Cyberpunk, I'm going to want to play Assassin's Creed Mirage. So I'm starting to play the stuff I didn't finish in Valhalla, like some of the DLC and some of the side content and stuff like that. I never technically finished the main quest, but I'm 30 hours into the game. I'm 30 hours in, and I don't know how much of the main quest I'm in, but I have to be pretty deep in it. But there's a lot of side content because it's a very big game. So I'm sure in the weeks to come, I'll continue playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla unless I get distracted by something else. But really recommend A Plague Tale and A Plague Tale Requiem, or Innocence and Requiem. And like I said, at the end of the show, I'll try and remember to talk about some spoilers. And we'll maybe talk about it again when Spencer gets back as well. Okay, let's talk about the Xbox versus the FTC part 2, or week 2, which was days 3, 4, and 5, I think. Yeah, because the first week was 2 days and the second week was 3 days. So this week we had a lot of interesting things because we had Jim Ryan testifying, we had Satya Nadella testifying, but also humorously, there were a bunch of improper redactions that happened and things that didn't get redacted that were supposed to. So we got a bunch of information that wasn't intended for public consumption. So I've pulled out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things that I find the most interesting. There's tons of other stuff that was interesting, but this is our show, and I talk about what I think is most interesting. And there's plenty of other podcasts that will break down every nitty-gritty bit of the detail, but I'm not going to cover 5 days of testimony in a 1-hour podcast once a week. It's just not my jive. I always pick the highlights and talk about what I want to talk about. So, number 1, Jim Ryan. And actually, I ordered this poorly because I think I have 2 more Jim Ryan things at the bottom. But the first thing I have is something Jim Ryan said. So he said, I talked to all the publishers, and they unanimously do not like Game Pass because it's a value destructive. So that was a quote from his testimony. I forgot what the question was. But the funny thing is, like he said, he didn't say most or many or vast majority. He said all publishers unanimously, which is a very strong word. And we know that that isn't true. There's lots of developers that have already come out singing the praises of Game Pass, especially, I can't remember. Maybe it's developers, not publishers. What did he say? He said publishers. Still, there are publishers that have come out saying they like it. There are some that have come out since he made this quote saying that they like it and they think that there's room in the market for different types of payment systems and different ways to go to market, different levels of risk. I know there's developers that love it, like the developer, and I'm pretty sure the publisher of the Descenders game, the bike game, the little indie hit, they said that they loved Game Pass for that game. And I think it's also on PlayStation Plus at this point. It's also like he calls Game Pass value destructive, but he's really just talking about day and date because PlayStation has PlayStation Plus now. And if he really thought it was value destructive, he wouldn't be putting his games in multi-game subscription services, which he is now doing. Gus, do you want to comment any on this, or have I, belabored him enough? I can't believe he even believes that he would say that testimony that is clearly just not true. Like objectively not true. You can just Google it and find enough publishers that have said, oh, this is good for us. We like having another option.
I mean, I guess just one of those things where just how much value these developers think that they're getting for their games when they put them on Game Pass. And the thing is that if they didn't think they were getting value at all, then they wouldn't put it on there. The thing is that people don't realize about like Game Pass and all that is that it's kind of like Spotify, in that they pay you a certain amount to put your game on Game Pass, and a lot of these games would not get exposure or not as much exposure otherwise if they were not on Game Pass. Like for a lot of these are like, this is like an indie publisher's place for them to shine. And so I guess that's like, it's kind of stupid to say that these people don't want, like, they don't like Game Pass. It's like a lot of people don't have a game without Game Pass.
Let's not forget that he doesn't publish. He's developing MLB The Show, and MLB publishes it on Game Pass. So yeah, he thinks it's value destructive, yet he can't block his own games.
He only says that now because he doesn't have an exclusive deal with Sony anymore to keep the show on PlayStation.
Yeah.
Like, dude, screw off.
Okay. So Satya Nadella, he had a quote that's been circulated quite a bit, which was, if it was up to me, I would love to get rid of the entire exclusives on console, but that's not for me to define, especially as a low share player in the console market. The dominant player there, he's referring to Sony, continuing, has defined market competition using exclusives. So that's the world we live in. I have no love for that world. So interesting view from Satya Nadella that he wants a world with no exclusives and that he thinks they only exist because Sony has defined the marketplace that way. Although so is Nintendo, so it's not just Sony, but those are the two dominant players.
People tend to forget that Mario exists.
Yeah, through this whole case, there was the whole debate about whether high-performance consoles are their own market as opposed to all game consoles, since Nintendo has some differentiators.
Which I won't come out and say I just simply don't agree with that. A game console is a game console.
Yeah, you
doesn't matter how high-powered
the fact that Xbox Series S and Nintendo Switch are priced identically to compete against each other says all you need to know. Plus, there's so many games that are on both.
Plus again, I said it before. It's like my girlfriend, who's not a gamer, told me she wanted a Switch. She never once said she wanted an Xbox. And that's coming from somebody who doesn't even game.
But that kind of actually reinforces the FTC's point, though, is that people that wouldn't consider a PlayStation or an Xbox buy a Nintendo, meaning they're not competitors because she didn't cross shop. That was their perspective.
But the thing is, she doesn't consider it because I have two of them.
Yeah, that's true. So it's a unique scenario. The other thing I wanted to say about this is, what would a world look like with no exclusives? Let's say all the governments of the world suddenly say this is anti-competitive, we outlaw exclusives, which they won't do because it's the definition of even Netflix and Amazon Prime and all that are defined by their exclusives. They own or buy properties.
Buy their Netflix originals or Prime originals.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as video games. So it's kind of insane that they have this perspective, because think about it. Is there any TV show that is so dominant that we would consider it think of the biggest TV shows to ever exist, like Game of Thrones or, I don't know, The Office. And so in a world without exclusives, what would that even look like? What are the benefits of buying one ecosystem over another if all the games are the same? It would only be about hardware, features, and price points at that point. It would be a completely different world. And honestly, I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm just saying it feels weird. It feels like, yes, some exclusives tend to be bad, but also some games get made because they're exclusives. They get investment because they're exclusives. And to Xbox's point, it's a lot easier when you only have to develop for one or two platforms. Starfield not having to also support PS4, PS4 Pro, PS5, or just PS5 in Starfield's example, but has helped them get the game out earlier was their testimony. So I'm going to stop talking. It looks like you have something you want to say too.
Well, I guess my whole thing is I'm kind of piggybacking off the whole exclusives thing, is that the thing is different about these show like Netflix and stuff is I don't have to pay $500 just to be able to watch Netflix, whereas I have to pay $500 to play these exclusives or whatever if I want to buy them on
True, but
gen.
At the very basest cost, you would have to buy something capable of watching, like a tablet, a phone,
true, yeah,
something.
like a Roku box or whatever the heck.
Assuming you owned nothing, though, you would have to buy a TV or something.
Your TVs anymore come with those. A lot of these TVs come with Amazon or whatever apps installed on them. That you
I know, but what I'm saying is you're taking for granted that everyone has a TV, but technically buying a TV is a barrier to entry, or buying a phone, or buying a tablet, or buying a laptop.
Yeah, and I agree with that. But my next point was that how you said about how these, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong about Amazon Prime. It's you have the whole price point difference is that Amazon Prime is expensive, $100-something. Can you just buy Prime Video?
I think you can do a monthly subscription,
okay.
But it's all Prime.
Yeah.
I think it includes the shipping and everything.
Okay, so it comes out to what would essentially be that yearly $130 a month, total or whatever, depending on the monthly.
You've got me curious, so I'm actually going to look it up
because I'm interested to see. Because it's technically, it's I buy Amazon Prime yearly, so I have it annually.
So they do sell it a la carte. So Prime Video with Amazon membership is $140 a year or $15 a month.
Yeah.
And Prime Video by itself is $9 a month. I had no idea.
That's pretty cheap. Comparatively to Netflix anymore.
Yeah, that puts them more expensive than the base cost of some of the ad-supported. Like Netflix base cost is like
no
$7.
one wants those ad-supported pieces of crap.
If you're talking ad-free, it's probably the second cheapest. Somebody's $5, and I can't remember who it is, but maybe all the $5 ones have ads. So anyway, we're getting off in the weeds.
It's like, well, all these people have different price points on their subscription services. So I guess it's like I still have a hard time seeing. It's like, is it Game Pass that's the problem, or is it exclusive? Because it's like,
well, I think they were just trying to get him to it. Yeah, and they just, he got to say whatever he wanted to when they asked the question.
Yeah.
Also, another funny exchange. The judge basically said, at the end of the week, which we'll talk about more of the comments from the end of the closing statements, but the judge asked a lot of questions to the FTC, and one of the questions was, would we be having this hearing if PlayStation had just signed the deal to guarantee Call of Duty on PlayStation for 10 years? Because it seems like we wouldn't. And another funny thing the judge said was, what was it? Oh, they said, let's assume that Call of Duty did become an exclusive to Game Pass. She questioned whether that would benefit consumers, because would that spark PlayStation as the dominant player to buff up PlayStation Plus, because now it's lagging in the marketplace and would need to come up with its own amount of content to compete. Like maybe forcing them to do first party games day and date. So the judge asked a lot of really good questions at the end of the week, and there's a really funny quote one that I'm gonna have.
I think the argument against that is that a lot of people, including probably even Spencer, would agree that Sony has the premier first party exclusive games.
But do they have nothing? The problem.
So it's like, why would they have to even bolster at all?
Well, the problem, I guess, everyone sees is there's basically 3 franchises that are so insanely big that nothing else exists as big as them. And it's Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, and Minecraft. And so the revenue generated by that, if you take that away from PlayStation, is so crippling that the question is, could they ever recover? But there's another quote we'll get to in a little bit where the judge is basically like, I don't care if it hurts Sony. What is it doing to the consumer? And
yeah. Because it's like, at the end of the day, it's not Sony that matters. And I think I feel like people are having a hard time getting past that.
Yeah.
Is Xbox creating a monopoly on the marketplace is the problem. And it's like, I just simply don't think that they are.
I wouldn't be happy if Microsoft and Sony bought up 90% of the major franchises and they were all exclusives to one or the other.
Yeah.
But I'm of the opinion that no one franchise or developer or publisher is gaming. There's nothing so big that somebody couldn't own it. If Sony bought Rockstar and Grand Theft Auto was exclusive, I would buy a PlayStation for sure. Is that anti-competitive? I don't know. But that, the gaming and Netflix video market, the video gaming market, all of these have been defined by the exclusives that draw to their subscription services.
Yeah.
And it's part of the business. It's competitive. It's not anti-competitive. By definition, it creates competition.
I guess if
HBO has a Game of Thrones, Showtime has to come up with a Dexter. And if Xbox has Call of Duty, then PlayStation has to come up with their answer to that to compete in the marketplace.
Yeah. And I agree but that also speaks to you in that you're somebody who owns both. And it's like, all it does is if you own an Xbox and you want to play, if you really want to play Grand Theft Auto, you'll just buy a PlayStation. And it's it's like you're having to spend that money. And I guess my problem is from a middle income consumers that I shouldn't have to be forced to buy both to enjoy games that I want to play. So,
but then my counter argument to that straight is,
I am anti-exclusive, just like old boy is.
But the counterpoint to that is you don't have the right to play everything out there. You can't play Mario on Xbox.
I don't, because
does that mean Nintendo is anti-competitive? Yeah. No, obviously not. So why are we carving out this exception for Call of Duty, saying that it
Yeah.
is so big that it defies the entire rest of the market.
It either needs to be everybody has exclusives or no one does, and that is my take. Like I don't see I don't see any of the other economics or anything. I see it from a, like you said, like a consumer standpoint. I should either be able to play everything or basically play nothing. Play whatever is on the console of my choosing and have to be stuck with that. Like, because not everybody has enough money to be spending on two consoles, let alone even one, really. So I hate the whole exclusivity thing. It's like the thing is, it's like I'm gonna play games that I want to play. So it's like whether they're exclusive or not is like, is that really going to affect my decision if I already have a console? No, because I'm telling you right now, I'm not spending $500 on a PlayStation 5 just so I can play Spider-Man.
Yeah,
When I can literally just go online, watch somebody else play it if I'm invested in the story. Like, it's like I gameplay for me is often secondary to how I play games. Like I'm there because it's like I want to experience what it is the game has to offer. Like the main reason I play World of Warships because I'm a big naval history person. Like that's something that I enjoy, and so I play the game because I get to play with these ships that are things that I've studied and learned about.
Final thought on this topic is after all this, I do think it's still going to go through, and we're going to talk about more points from the hearing.
As it should.
Yeah, I don't think it's anti-competitive, and I do think it should go through. But I do still wish this just hadn't happened. I don't think
bring us Titanfall 3, and it'll be, well, actually, no,
I don't
not
think
even true because that's an Xbox thing.
I don't think we as consumers are being hurt or benefiting from this happening, and I wish it kind of hadn't, because I wish Microsoft had spent their money differently. But they see something I don't, and they're going after mobile and all these things, so that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it's not going to Tencent or Embracer or
well, not even that, but Diablo 4 is an Activision.
Yeah, I mean, there's other good games, but anyway, number 3. So we found out through, I'm not sure if this one was meant to be redacted. I think this one was fine, but maybe it was supposed to be redacted. I think it was one of the instances of something that was supposed to be redacted not being redacted, but I'm not actually sure. So anyway, we know how much they paid for Ninja Theory, which was $117 million to acquire it when they acquired it like 5-6 years ago. Ninja Theory, the developer of Hellblade. What's crazy about that is the stuff that was supposed to be redacted with Black Sharpie, but you could actually read through it because the way they scanned it and was accidentally put up in the court documents. We found out that The Last of Us Part 2 and Horizon Forbidden West each cost over $200 million to develop. And they also had the head counts. I think it was like 300 and 500 or 500 and 300. I'm not sure which. I think actually The Last of Us had less people working on it than Horizon Forbidden West. But that's interesting because that means both of those games by themselves cost more to develop than the entirety of buying Ninja Theory. In fact, you could buy 4 Ninja Theories for the price that they paid for The Last of Us Part 2 and Horizon Forbidden West. So they're clearly, high-end games, so they cost a lot to produce, but just kind of speaks to how much games are costing. And now we know how much Sony is spending on their top-tier first-party games. Okay, next up. This one was supposed to be redacted as well because they later pulled it down and then re-uploaded it redacted. So we know that Xbox back in the 2016, 2017 timeframe when they started acquiring studios, they basically started with a list of 100 developers and publishers for their acquisition targets. And they whittled that down to a list that was called, the slide in the documents is called Final List, 17 top candidates for consideration on console and PC. So these were their targets for acquisition. This document, I don't know when it's from, but it's definitely several years old. And here I can explain why. Because under developers, it has 4. It has Housemark, Behavioral Interactive, People Can Fly, and Remedy Entertainment, which is interesting because Housemark has since been bought by PlayStation. Remedy is still third party. People Can Fly, I think, is under somebody's umbrella now. I can't remember. Then they have developers who self-publish. They had 11-bit studios, Bohemia Interactive, Bungie, who's now owned by Sony, Crytek, IO Interactive, who's now independent, Larian Studios, Manticore Games, Playdead, Rebellion Developments, Thunderful, and Supergiant Games. And then for just publishers, these are the most interesting. They looked at acquiring Paradox Interactive, Gus and Spencer's favorite, and Sega. Sega is the one that everybody latched onto when this news broke. But also really interesting that they looked at buying Bungie, because Bungie was later scooped up by PlayStation, and they used to be owned by Microsoft. So that's all really interesting. Another interesting one is on the longer list, Square Enix was on there, but I guess they didn't make the final list. So that was another one of their acquisition targets that they at least evaluated. Sega, it seems like they might have gotten the farthest with based on like reports, but maybe not even that far. And IO Interactive was on that 17 top candidates list, but also through some documents, looks to be an Xbox exclusive. It's reportedly a dark fantasy RPG. So, Gus, I'll take a breath there. Of these 17 studios that they considered acquiring,
Paradox.
Yeah. Which, you know what? Some of these fall under the example of you don't really need to buy the studio to get the goods, because currently Sega and Paradox Interactive are practically putting all of their games on Game Pass. In Paradox literally is. So like they didn't need to buy those studios. Maybe it would have been cheaper to buy them than to do contracts to put all the content on there, but Sega and Paradox are supporting Game Pass wholeheartedly.
That's the people who make Crysis, right?
Yeah, they did, but now they also make CryEngine, which is used in some games, but not many anymore. And I don't know what else they developed more recently. Of the stuff on here, the ones that jumped out at me that I would have been interested in them in acquiring would have been Remedy and IO Interactive.
Those are the two I was looking at.
People Can Fly, I could see maybe, but they don't really scream AAA to me. But if you're trying to fill up Game Pass, but that's another example of we had Outriders on Game Pass. So like they've supported it pretty well, and Hitman's on Game Pass. Like a lot of these studios are people that are supporting Game Pass, which also leads me to believe that maybe like some of the stuff is they knew the inner workings of some of these studios because they have good working relationships with them. Not all of them. Like Housemarque is a PlayStation focused studio. Almost all their games have been either only on PlayStation or favored PlayStation or first on PlayStation, many of them exclusives. And now they're a first party developer.
Well, you also have to think about like the personal of like the people who already own these studios of these developers or whomever, is that maybe they're not looking to do anything but get a payday.
Yeah, well, or maybe they don't want to sell. Maybe they looked into them and they're like, yeah we're not interested.
It's like maybe, it's like, so it's like, it's like some people say everyone has a price. Whether that's true or not, I just feel like it's one of those things where it's like, what is Microsoft willing to pay for them?
It's hilarious you say that, because Bobby Kotick on the stand, after saying he didn't like Game Pass and some other things, the FTC lawyer said, well, then why are you selling to Microsoft if you don't like Game Pass and they're going to put all your games on Game Pass? Because he said he would never put Activision's games on Game Pass if not for this deal and Microsoft choosing to do it after he's gone. And his answer was, I'm doing this deal because it's a good value for my shareholders, and that's who I'm responsible to. Like they're getting a good payment on their investment, and that's who I answer to. Which was a good answer, because he said, I hate this stuff. I wouldn't do this.
True.
But I'm making money for the people.
He's about to be out anyway.
And he'll get money for his shares, so he's going to get a huge
then he'll be
payday.
Removed. So,
I wonder if he'll stay for a while though for a transition.
I thought the whole point of a lot of people was like, he better be gone.
Well, that's true. And he's a controversial figure. He definitely saved Activision a long time ago, but since then he's become more controversial.
But I think he's turned from the hero to the villain pretty quick.
Okay, so the next piece of evidence from the case that's of interest, and this just confirms something we already assumed or thought was true. Evidence and emails shown in the court docs indicate that Microsoft sacrificed supply of Xbox Series X to build out their xCloud server blades with the chips from Xbox Series X, because that's how they make xCloud, the Xbox Cloud. They put Series X on server blades in cloud infrastructure. So it's literally a Series X, but instead of in a black box, it's in a server blade, and they put a bunch of them in each blade, and they put those in their servers, in their server locations. So they're literally the chips exactly the same ones from the Xbox. They're not special ones. They're not, server grade similar chips. They're literally exactly Xbox chips. And in their mind, they thought it would be a long-term gain to build out cloud, and that it would take off, I think, faster than it has, because it turns out that I think that it was the wrong decision. I think cloud has not taken off the way they hoped it would, and is going to take much longer to become any kind of significant driver of anything, and they sacrificed consoles because Xbox was hard to get for a very, very long time. It was harder to get than PlayStation 5 as recently as the last few months. Finally, it feels like we're seeing Series X on shelf. I actually saw one. I went to the it's not the grand opening. I went to the pre-grand opening of the new Micro Center store here in Indianapolis, and they had PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X on the shelf, ready to go. And I didn't even go on the first day the store was open. It was a few days after, and they still had them for sale. So interesting to see that confirmed. Let's see, what else? Okay, I have 2 more points from the FTC stuff. In closing arguments, the judge corrected the FTC at one point when they said, quote, the harms, for example, to Sony in terms of optimization continues on, but that's the relevant part of the quote. And Judge Corley responded with, it's not the harm to Sony, it's the harm to consumers. And so it was very like the judge catching them off guard that they were talking about the harm to Sony, and that's not what they are there to do, which I think a lot of people felt that that's somewhat how this case has come off. Also, from closing arguments, it seems the judge asked a lot of pointed questions that seemed to indicate that the FTC had not made its case very well for Call of Duty exclusivity being a thing that would happen and harm consumers, because it either will happen and won't harm consumers, or it won't happen and it would harm consumers, or whatever. Either way, there's 2 variables. Will it be exclusive or not? Which Microsoft is saying it won't. FTC is saying, yeah, but it could. And if it was, would it harm consumers? Yes or no? And it seems like the judge's answer is going to be in both cases, no. But there's other merits of the case, like the cloud stuff that hung up the CMA in UK. And then the judge asked the FTC, basically after she said, Jim Ryan said, there's nothing anti-competitive to making Starfield exclusive. Let me rephrase that. The way I wrote it in my notes. Judge Corley then asked the FTC, saying to PlayStation Chief Jim Ryan, saying, there's nothing anti-competitive to making Star whatever exclusive. So the judge was asking, why is Jim Ryan saying there's nothing anti-competitive about it if the FTC is saying there is? And then when the FTC didn't know why, the judge responded and said, because he does the same thing. So the judge even recognizes that PlayStation makes their games exclusive, so that's why they don't feel that Starfield is anti-competitive. Because if Starfield is anti-competitive, so would be them buying Housemarque and making their next game exclusive, or them buying the infamous developer Insomniac and then making Spider-Man exclusive. That was actually before they bought them, so I guess it would be Spider-Man 2, but it was already exclusive, so there's some give and take there. But there's got to be at least one studio they bought that had multi-platform games. None just come to mind, but you get what I'm saying. He's like, yeah, they do exclusives too. That's why he can't say it's anti-competitive, because if it's anti-competitive, he's doing the same thing. So the judge really had some pointed questions for them about the exclusives deal. I could still see it going the other way because it seemed like the CMA was going to let it through too, and they had their weird thing with the cloud, but it doesn't seem like it's going to get hung up on Call of Duty. I know you didn't follow this as closely as I did, Gus. Spencer, I would say I followed this super closely. Spencer followed it semi-closely, and I'd say you were the more layman among us that was least interested in reading court case transcripts. So I know you probably don't have a whole lot to say here, but I guess summing this whole thing up, is there anything you feel differently about this after all this testimony and all this stuff come out from behind closed doors?
I wish it was over.
Yeah, me too.
It's like, I just think it is ridiculous. I think I'm with the judge. I'm like, why is it a problem? Like, just come out with a new Call of Duty then.
Yeah, and then they'd say, well, we can't. Call of Duty is so massive.
I mean, but it's not true though, because it's like Halo was the premier game before Call of Duty came around.
I think Call of Duty has always outsold Halo as long as it has existed, since Call of Duty 2 on console.
Interesting.
I would have to look at the numbers, but it's partially because it's always been multi-platform and Halo has always been exclusive.
I guess that's true, but it's like during like the heyday, it's like Halo was like the competitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's become tiring, and I think Sony's points are terrible.
I think everyone's points are terrible, to be honest, but Xbox does seem to be on greater footing because as much as I think in a perfect world, they want to make everything exclusive. But I think, one, it would make them lose money because PlayStation is too much of the Call of Duty business, so it wouldn't make financial sense. And two,
because Sony had the Sony's just mad because they're losing all of this extra stuff that they had before, because it's like, you'll remember, and I'm sure
they still have
people do
exclusives.
That
they still get an exclusive mode every year.
Exclusives, it's that they had Call of Duty early access.
No, I'm saying that still exists. Like you still get an exclusive mode on PlayStation that doesn't come to Xbox for I believe 2 years.
Even if it's still a thing
get
now,
early
it's
access on PlayStation.
It's something that they've had for years. So it's like I don't.
But Xbox did it before them in the 360 era. And you got maps first on 360.
To see Xbox come out here and just be like, "You can keep all this crap. We just want this deal done." It's like, man, we'll do whatever we got to do to pretty much get this deal done, other than just make it, just buy it and then make it exclusive on PlayStation like that. They've done just about everything but that, and I don't get what the holdup is.
I will say one way it is benefiting consumers is I have Game Pass and suddenly I'll have access to a ton of Activision games that I would not have spent money on otherwise because their back catalog is semi deep. And if I own the Call of Duties, but I don't always want to drag my 360 discs out. And there's other games I haven't played, like the Diablo series, that I don't really want to invest a ton of time in, but I definitely would dip my toe in and see what I like and what I don't. Which is why I love Game Pass. So anyway, that's enough. We should know. People are predicting that we'll know within a week. So we could actually know how this is going to turn out before our next show records, which would be cool. And then hopefully then we'll have a path because, did you also see that a judge in the UK government, CMA, asked to delay the trial for their, what do you call it? Xbox's appeal of the CMA's decision in the UK. And the judge basically said that it would be, this is not the judge's wording, but it would be a miscarriage of justice to delay it, or like that it would not be fair to Xbox or consumers to delay it. So I thought that was interesting, but the trial for that, or the appeal hearing or whatever it is happening in July. So, and now it's July 3rd. So also happy Independence Day. Now I'm saying July 3rd out loud. If you're in America, July 4th, the anniversary of the founding of our country, is tomorrow. And if you're not celebrating, I hope that your country's Independence Day or founding holiday is just
like Canada Day was recently.
Yeah, but Canada's currently like coating
Flag Day,
coating our state in ash from their wildfires, and I'm like thousands of miles away.
They actually did coat us literally in their ash like the last week.
Yeah. We had the little meter that tells you how bad the air quality is, and it was pegged on the second highest grade that was like, do not go outside for 3 days. Thankfully, it's gone down since then, but apparently it's going to burn all summer, somebody told me. I didn't actually fact check them, but they're letting it burn for some reason, or they don't have a way to contain it, so they're trying to like control where it goes or something. I don't know. I'm not a Canadian Mountie firefighter. I know those aren't the same thing. I'm just making a joke. I'm sorry, Canadians. I love your country. It's a very good neighbor to us, and it's nice. I've been there.
Some
2 or 3
people would
times.
disagree.
No,
I'm not saying I'm one of them.
I think Canadian. I much
prefer them to Mexico. No offense, Mexico.
Well, even Mexico is nice compared to some other countries we're at odds with more recently. China, North Korea, Russia.
Russia's closer than you think.
I know that's true. Alaska, but yeah, and in Mexico, like Mexico has like become the new China for manufacturing. I was watching a documentary about that, about how like that is a lot of manufacturing has moved from China to Mexico. Anyway, number 2, if we can call it number 2, now that we're getting outside the main story of FTC, IGN had an exclusive story. They spoke to 13 sources within, I guess it could be within Xbox or other places within the supply chain for this, but that perfect dark is still years away. So they spoke with 13 sources familiar with development. So that could be at the developer, that could be at the publisher, it could be at some of the partners, the partner developers, could be people in marketing or PR. So I don't know who they spoke to. That's why I kind of backpedal on what I said a minute ago. But 13 sources familiar with development, and at least a few of them were developers. And apparently it's still in the early stages of development, which I put a note in here of my thoughts so I wouldn't forget to say this, which is I think this is fine. Give them the room to experiment to get it right. Like, it's a new studio with new staff, and there have been problems and restarts and turnover, and those are issues, and those do need to get hammered out. And they've changed, development partners from certain affinity to what's the Embracer group, the Tomb Raider studio they're working with now. Why can't I think of their name?
I don't know why I can't think of it either.
Yeah,
starts with an R, doesn't it?
Tip of my tongue. No, they made the first first two Tomb Raider games, and they made Avengers, and now they're helping out on Perfect Dark. But anyway,
holy crap! Why can I not remember that?
I know, it's killing me. Somebody listening to this is like
screaming it at us.
Yeah, right, screaming it at their TV or their phone or their car. You know what's funny though? I'm sure somebody will tweet me and tell me because. Or Brett, who usually listens to the show and will text me on Monday and be like, "Hey, the
Crystal
Dynamics." Oh, Crystal Dynamics. See, you thought of it before.
I could... Square Enix.
Yes, that is correct. Anyway, so what I wanted to say is I think this is fine. Like, let a game have room to fail, to find its footing and get it right. Like, yes, I wish turnover wasn't so big, and I wish they weren't stumbling as much, but I think we're finally getting to a place where they've announced enough games in the pipeline over the next year or two where I'm like, okay, take your time with Fable, take your time with Perfect Dark. Let's get those right. For heaven's sake, take your time with the next Halo game. Get it right. As long as we start having all these studios pumping out content, which it seems like we're finally maybe getting to, but also the quality has to be there. So if it's a question of getting a game out or getting a game out that is a 9 out of 10, review score game, they need to focus on that 9 out of 10 because one amazing game will forgive a long drought of content. Like if you brought out a game that was as good as The Last of Us Part 2 or Horizon Forbidden West, a lot of fans would forgive that you didn't put out a game for the prior 10 months if that one game you did put out was absolutely amazing, blow your socks off, system seller. So that's why I say take your time, allow people to fail, let them stumble if they need to, as long as they get some good leadership to keep them on the right direction. I think some people are disappointed because they're like, they announced this 2 or 3 years ago and it's barely started, which I will admit is a little disappointing, but sometimes you just got to let people have room to fail. And also I think they just announced it so people would stop asking, to be honest, because I don't think it was ready to announce. And yeah. So Gus, did you even play the first 2 Perfect Darks? Like I have no affinity for this series.
No, I did not.
So I'm going into it with fresh eyes when this new one comes out. Okay, this next one is up your alley. Spencer sent me this. Apparently, rumors and leaks suggest that Assassin's Creed Black Flag is being remade, and the word remake was used.
Spencer and Kent, our other friend, would very much care about this.
So they say it's barely started, several years away still. But the question I ask of you, this was one of my first games that I purchased for my Xbox One. I believe it came in the same box with my Xbox One when I bought it. It was the first game for Xbox One, actually, now that I'm remembering it. It was literally my first game. Do we even want this? Like, do we need this?
Spencer would argue that I need this, me personally, because that was one of the best
but we
games.
As the ecosystem,
well,
or Ubisoft fans, like, there's so many new Assassin's Creed games in development. I don't know that I need a remake of an old one. Like, I'm fine to go play the old one. Like, it would have to be a huge step up.
I honestly, I believe it probably would be, especially with the naval combat. But the thing that sparks my interest is it is a remake, not a remaster.
I know, so that is interesting.
That to me is enough to get me on board with it, because like Spencer would be, he's probably like, heck yeah, hearing this, because he wanted me to play this so badly. It's like this, like The Witcher 3, or like the 2 games you're like, you have to play. And both of these were games, and both of those were games I never really got into.
It's funny because this to me is like the last of the old style of Assassin's Creed game. Even though
exactly why I never got into it.
Well, I know Unity and Syndicate, I believe both technically came after this, and Syndicate is a good game too. But this to me felt like the last bastion of the 360 era, because this was a cross-gen game. You could also get this on 360.
Well, yeah, because around the same time, AC Rogue came out.
Yeah, and To be
which
fair,
was a 360 exclusive.
You pointed out that this is a remake. Oh, Rogue came out with Unity. Those two were the same year. So it was the year after 4 came out.
Pardon me then.
But you're right. Remake versus remaster. They released the Ezio trilogy as a remaster, but it was really just up-resed and ported. They did the same thing with Assassin's Creed 3, and they have a higher, I think it's just a higher res version also of Assassin's Creed Rogue. So all those are just ports with higher resolution. I don't think any of those included remade assets. So this would be the first like true remake of Assassin's Creed that isn't just a remaster port where they did very little work. If this word can be taken at face value. Okay, how about this next one? You're gonna have to carry us on this one. Number 4, we had a new football game announced called Wild Card Football. Now it's interesting because it has no NFL license. It just has the NFL Players Association likenesses. So they can use real players, but they can't use the teams that they play for. Colin Kaepernick is going to be on the cover. It's being developed at Saber Interactive, and it's part of their Playground series alongside NBA Playgrounds. It has a release date of October 10th, so it's just a few months away. And it's a 7v7 arcade-style football game. So it kind of like is the modern interpretation of like a Blitz or NFL Blitz if you played that a long time ago, or the football version of NBA Playgrounds where it's very arcadey and you have like power-ups and abilities and stuff in addition to playing football, and it has a cartoony aesthetic to it. I don't know what the market is for these arcade sports titles. Like NFL Playgrounds seemed like it was well received, but it didn't seem like it like bounced on the charts as like a bestseller. Like, Gus, are you interested at all in a wild card football arcade style
actually, because I think
football game?
I think this has a market for kids more than Madden does, because that game is a bit involved for a
That's
child's
true.
brain.
Simple it down and focus on like fun and abilities and playing with your friends.
And it's just like, man, the thing, and I think the reason why we have a market for it right now is because Madden has basically just torched their goodwill the last 5 or 6 years. Like,
that's true, but they also have fans that will buy it, whether it's good or bad.
Goodwill into oblivion with their refusal. And the people that make the game would probably disagree. Like, oh, we made all these changes, so the game's so much better. I'm like, dude, your game is trash compared to what it used to be. And so I think that's why there's a market.
Yeah, it is sad that they didn't get the NFL license, though, because I feel like when you watch the trailer, it does look fun, but it looks weird because like all the generic teams, but it has like the actual likeness of Colin Kaepernick.
Right, but just how much do you need of the actual like NFL teams likeness when you have real players, and then people can just make whatever they want with them?
That's true.
It already is an arcade game. Do you need the teams? No.
The other thing I couldn't find, and I checked 3 different places on different news articles and sites, is the price. Like, I can't tell if this is going to be a $40, $50 game or if this is going to be a full $70 game. And I have no idea what NBA Playgrounds was when it launched. I think Playgrounds 2 being the most recent one, if memory serves correct. So I'm curious what the price point will be as well. I would really love to know what Spencer's take on this is. Like, if he's interested at all. Like, as far as, would he play it? Like, Gus, would you play this? Would you buy this if it was $50?
I'd play if it was on Game Pass. I want to see more of it before I would get into it.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, the last 2 are the what we would have called the quick hits. And one is a news story that I'm calling number 5, Come on Barbie, Let's Go Party. And this sees the Barbie 1956 Chevy Corvette EV and the 2022 GMC Hummer EV pickup added to the game for all players, Forza Horizon 5 being the game, being gifted those cars. So to promote the Barbie movie, they're also doing giveaways for a custom Barbie's Dream House Xbox Series S and some Barbie dolls with Xbox
Barbenheimer
Xbox merch on the Barbies. But the only real content video game wise is you get 2 free Barbie cars in Forza Horizon 5.
I have a serious question for you, Tim.
Oh no.
Will I understand Oppenheimer if I don't see Barbie first?
Oh yeah, the whole like there's 4 major blockbusters launching in 3 weeks. How are they all going to survive? Because you have Oppenheimer, Barbie, Indiana Jones, and Mission Impossible.
The big part of the meme was Barbie and Oppenheimer
of the same weekend.
It's just about how they're literally two starkly different movies, and it's like people memeing about like it's like, am I gonna understand one if I don't watch the other?
Yeah, the
It's
sequel.
like, no, I don't think you will understand Barbie if you don't watch how the atomic bomb was created first.
Well, I think Barbie is going to be an atomic bomb at the box office, if I had to predict. I have no interest
I don't
in that
think
movie.
I'll get my money's worth if they don't just nuke the movie theater that I'm in while I'm in it. Literally.
Yeah. I don't know what to think. I'm a little interested in Oppenheimer. I'm mostly interested in Oppenheimer because of the cast and the people behind the camera that are involved in it. The actual movie trailer doesn't look amazing to me. It looks just acceptable. But when I see Robert Downey Jr. and Christopher Nolan involved, and there's a few others, obviously, Cillian Murphy, Matt Damon. Matt Damon is huge. I can't believe Matt Damon's in that movie. It just like that makes me want to see it. Anyway, we're off the trails here, but yeah, go get your free Barbie stuff in Forza Horizon 5. If anything, it's a way to get the GMC Hummer EV without having to do the festival challenges that were a week or two ago, which have now since passed. So the next opportunity to get a Hummer EV has come and gone, and now you have to wait for a wheel spin or to find it in the auction house or some of the other ways to get stuff that is not, you just can't go out and buy it. So now you can get one for free by going to your inbox in the game. I think it's available now too. I haven't checked, booted mine up to see. And then the 1956 Chevy Corvette. It says EV Corvette, which I'm guessing is from the movie because there was no 1956 Corvette EV. Or maybe the Xbox article I pulled this from had a typo, but that's what it said. Yeah. And finally, Games with Gold for the month of July are Darkwood, which normally retails for $15. So you're getting a whole $15 worth of value. That one's out now. July 1st is when it became available. And the second game coming out at July 16th is When the Past Was Around, and that retails for $8.50 normally. So you're getting a total of $24 of value in your 2 free games with gold this month. When you compare that to PlayStation, who's giving away Alan Wake 2 Remastered and Call of Duty Cold War, Black Ops Cold War, the quality is quite stark between PlayStation and Xbox in free monthly games with the Gold or PlayStation Plus essential tier. I don't know why Xbox still does this if they're not going to invest much money in it. Like, their metrics have to tell them that almost no one is playing these games. I mean, I redeem them all, and I kind of hope that just by me redeeming them, that I know on the Epic Game Store, they pay the giveaway game people based on the number of copies redeemed. So I hope that by me redeeming it, these indie devs are getting some money because I'm definitely not playing their games. And I'm sure they would prefer that I play them, but at least me downloading all of them and adding them to my library, I hope they're benefiting financially from that, at least so they're making some money, because that is the only good thing that is probably coming out of these relatively obscure games continually being pumped through Game Pass. The last time I played Games with Gold, except for Star Wars Racer, must have been 4 or 5 years ago. Like a game that was actually a decent game that I hadn't already played. There's been a few good ones, but I less than a handful, like less than 5 for sure in the last 5 years, which is insane. Well, this week has felt really off because we sat down to record this late, and I've been interrupted multiple times by children. Some of that will probably come through on the podcast. Some of it, hopefully, you as the audience didn't notice. But thank you for sticking with us and making it this long. Now, before we go, I'm going to talk about A Plague Tale Requiem briefly. And Gus, you can be my sounding board because you've heard in chat from me and Spencer privately what's going on here. So if you don't want to have Plague Tale Requiem spoiled, feel free to end right now. All that's going to happen is I'm going to talk about a few spoilers for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to do an outro, and then we'll end the show. If you don't plan on playing Plague Tale Requiem, or you've already beaten it, then enjoy what I have to say, because I think it's really worth talking about, even though the game's been out for like 6 months, 8 months. And here's my 2 cents. So the after credits, we see the next, or at least another carrier of the macula after the Amicia's brother Hugo is assumed dead based on the end of the game, where you have to throw a rock at him to kill him and to stop him from destroying everything. And then after the credits roll, we see an arm with a macula growing in it with what looks like a modern like sheet on it, and we hear a heart rate monitor in the background. So what we know from the lore of the two games is that the macula is supposed to have a carrier roughly every 8 centuries. So if the first game took place in the 1300s, which is the 14th century, the next game would take place, or the next macula carrier would happen in the 2100s, in the 22nd century. So if this is a tease for a third game, then the third game could potentially be set in the near future, in the year like 2140, 2150, 2160, sometime in that time frame. I forget the exact year, but it'd be roughly 800 years after A Plague Tale Innocence, Innocence, because that's when he first became, or at least we first found out about the macula. And in the game, you find out about the previous carrier and their protector. So the reason this is so interesting is the whole draw of the Plague Tale, the two games, was that they were set during this period that had never really been explored in AAA games. Or, I mean, the 1300s is just so far outside of where we normally get video games, and it had these supernatural and fictional elements with the macula and the plague and how the rats and all that stuff that were embellished. But now, if you jump that forward 800 years and you do a game set in the near future, like what kind of sci-fi does that come? How does the art of the game change? How does the gameplay change? I mean, potentially that would be after guns or lasers or whatever is said in the 2100s. It's just interesting that they at that possibility. And why would you put that at the end of the game as a teaser? Like, clearly with the sound of a heart rate monitor, which I believe was invented in the 1970s, so we know it was at least after 1970. Why would you tease that if it wasn't for a different game? Like, it clearly seems to be teasing a third game. Otherwise, that wouldn't need to be there. Like, you could just have some other tease or some other like hint after the credits as a tag, just to kind of give closure. They said they never intended to have a sequel. Like, the first game was meant to be standalone, and the second game, it was so successful that they decided to do the second game. And the second game, I think, is clearly better than the first. Like, I have a little bit of recency bias because I just beat the second game, and it's been a while since I played the first game, but I like them both, and the second one seemed to improve upon it in almost every single way. So I am really excited about a third game. And I'm honestly surprised that Xbox didn't try and acquire this studio, because between what they've done with the Plague Tale and what they've done with a Flight Simulator, and they're now working on another Flight Simulator game, you'd think they'd want to tie these guys up to make exclusives. Then again, Flight Simulator already is an exclusive, so maybe they would just be tying up Plague Tale franchise at this point. But then also, what would a sequel be called? Like, I assume it would be a Plague Tale and then another word like the other two. But would they change it to be like a more futuristic modern word to reflect the future setting of the game? I don't know. It just, all of it has me very excited, and I'm afraid I probably won't hear anything for like 2 or 3 years, which is kind of a bummer because it was so good. But yeah. Also, I'm not going to try and hunt down all the achievements on this game. I just want to because of how heavy it was, I'm going to let my one playthrough sit. I didn't use a guide or chase after any of the collectibles, because when a game has a very engrossing story, I find that all to like take me out of it. So I never want to use like a collectibles guide or anything like that in a game like this. But it does mean that I never end up chasing trophies or achievements in games like this, because that was my playthrough. I don't want to replay it, even if it was a new game plus or a chapter select or something like that. Like, it kind of like my emotions are tied to that one playthrough. Anyway, Gus, I know this doesn't really affect you at all because you didn't play the first two games, and you probably wouldn't play the third one having not played the first two games. But thank you for hearing me on this rant. And I mean, you have to at least think it's cool that they might take a game that was set in the 1300s and jump it forward to 2100 for the third game. Like, that idea of like twist and stuff.
I do find cool. that interesting, because I don't think that's anything we've ever really seen before,
except for Assassin's Creed, where it's all over the world, all over the map, all over the time. The difference between the farthest back Assassin's Creed game, Odyssey, and Syndicate
but
is
to
how
say
many years.
That they're the only ones who have done it.
Yeah, truly. Yeah. It's very interesting. Very cool. I can't wait to see what they do. I hope they do something. But we'll see. Well, that's where I'm going to end it this week. Let's see. Final thoughts. Spencer should be back next week. He'll be back from vacation, so hopefully we have him back and he could talk about his thoughts of A Plague Tale as well as anything from the FTC. And yeah, looking forward to a quiet summer. I preloaded. I think Gus and I both have preloaded Starfield. I don't know if Spencer has, but I have that sitting on my Xbox staring at me. So I'm trying to clean out my backlog. I don't want to play anything new until I've cleaned out my backlog, and then Starfield. Like I said, Starfield, then Cyberpunk, and then Assassin's Creed Mirage, and there's a few other games coming out in that time frame that I want to jump on as well. So we'll see. Thanks as always for listening. I've been your host, Tim Shelton, and you can follow me on Twitter at Tim Shelton, and please do, and share the show and write us reviews and help us grow the show. We're a small fan-focused podcast, and we'd love your support. Gus?
And I'm Gus Harden. If you have any questions for me, you can tweet them at multiformpod on twitter.com.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.
New episodes post every Monday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. You can contact us on Twitter at multiformpod or by email at questions@multiformpodcast.com. If you enjoyed our show and you're feeling extra generous, please share it with your friends or on social media. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or anywhere you listen.